Welcome everyone. Today we are walking through one of the most glamorous and iconic cities on the French Riviera, Cannes. When you hear Cannes, you probably think of movie stars, red carpets, super yachts, and pure luxury, and you wouldn't be wrong. But beyond the flashbulbs of the world's most famous film festival, there is a beautiful Mediterranean city with deep historical roots, winding old town streets, and an incredibly rich local culture. Over the next hour, we'll be exploring the absolute best of Cannes. We'll stroll down the legendary Promenade de la Croisette, trace the handprints of Hollywood royalty, wander through the bustling town centre, and finally climb up to the historic Castre Castle for a breathtaking view over the harbour. And here we are, starting our walk, right where the Mediterranean meets the glamour, Croisette Beach. Just look at that water. That specific, brilliant shade of azure blue is exactly why they call this region the Côte d'Azur. This stretch of sand is arguably one of the most famous coastlines in the world, and as we walk along the edge here, you can really feel why. Notice the endless rows of colourful parasols and pristine sun loungers lined up perfectly along the water's edge. Most of the beach space you're looking at along this stretch is actually privately owned by the luxury hotels located just across the street. If you want to spend the day at one of these private beach clubs, it's an experience in true Riviera luxury. You're not just renting a beach chair, you're getting 5-star service right on the sand. It is fascinating to think about what this exact spot used to look like. A couple of hundred years ago, this was nothing more than a swampy, windswept stretch of wild coastline. Local fishermen would pull their small wooden boats up right about where we are walking right now. It wasn't until the mid-19th century when wealthy British and Russian aristocrats started flocking here to escape the cold winters that the shoreline began to transform. Interestingly, the city of Cannes takes the pristine look of this beach very seriously. Before the summer season kicks into high gear, the sand is meticulously cleaned, sifted, and often replenished by the city to make sure it looks absolutely perfect. If you were to walk down this exact stretch of sand during the Cannes Film Festival in May, it would look completely different. Massive temporary pavilions, pop-up restaurants, and exclusive nightclubs are constructed directly on the sand. The biggest names in Hollywood attend lavish after-parties here, with the music echoing out over the water until dawn. But even outside of the festival, or if you aren't lounging on a private sunbed, the atmosphere here is simply fantastic. There are public sections of the beach mixed in, like Mace Beach, just a bit further down, which actually turns into a massive, free outdoor cinema during the film festival. Stepping just off the sand, we are now on the Promenade de la Croisette. This palm-lined boulevard is quite literally the main artery of Cannes tourism. It stretches for about 2 kilometers right along the coastline. On one side, you have the beautiful blue sea. On the other, a parade of high-end designer boutiques from Chanel to Dior, and some of the most prestigious hotels in the world. It's the perfect place for people watching. You'll see everything from families enjoying a gelato to folks stepping out of luxury sports cars. Speaking of prestigious hotels, look at this magnificent building. This is the Intercontinental Carlton Cannes. Built in 1911, it is the undisputed grand dame of the Croisette. Its beautiful Belle Epoque architecture stands out instantly, especially those two distinctive domes on either end. Fun local legend. It is said those twin domes were modelled after the breasts of La Belle Otero, a famous courtesan of the French Riviera during the early 20th century. During the film festival, this hotel is essentially ground zero for celebrities and movie executives. It is a true piece of Cannes history. Continuing our walk down the Croisette, now we have a nice long stretch ahead of us to just take in the atmosphere. Notice the beautifully manicured gardens we are passing, and these magnificent maritime pines offering a little bit of welcome shade. The city actually employs an army of gardeners to take immaculate care of this promenade year-round. It is hard to believe when you look at all this paving and luxury that in the early 19th century, this was just a bumpy dirt road. It was known as the Chemin de la Petite Croix, the path of the little cross, which is where the name Croisette comes from. Back then, it was surrounded by nothing but windswept sand dunes, swamps, and a few grazing donkeys. The story of how this dirt path became a global symbol of luxury is actually completely accidental. In 1834, a British Chancellor named Lord Brougham was travelling to Italy for a holiday, but when he reached this area, there was a cholera outbreak across the border, and the authorities forced him into quarantine. Stuck in the tiny, unknown fishing village of Cannes, he ended up falling completely in love with the mild winter climate, the light and the beautiful scenery. He loved it so much that he built a sprawling villa here. Over the next few years, he invited his wealthy friends from the British aristocracy to come down and escape the dreary London winters. And just like that, the trend was set. Word spread across Europe, and Russian royals, French nobles, and wealthy industrialists started flocking to Cannes. By the late 1800s, this simple dirt track had been widened and paved to accommodate the horse, drawn carriages of the European elite who wanted to parade up and down the waterfront. If you look along the promenade today, you'll see a lot of people resting on these iconic blue iron chairs, the famous chaises blues of the Riviera. They are scattered all along the pathway, and sitting in one of these to just watch the world go by is practically a mandatory Cannes experience. Take a look over to the right side of the boulevard, away from the sea. This is where the modern wealth of Cannes is on full display. Every major international luxury fashion house has a boutique right here on the Croisette. Dior, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Gucci. Their window displays are practically art installations. And, of course, driving slowly past those boutiques, you'll see an endless parade of Ferraris, Bentleys, and Rolls-Royces. It is part of the theatre of the Croisette. People come here to see, but mostly they come here to be seen. What's fascinating about the history of this promenade is that, for its first 100 years as a resort, it was strictly a winter destination. Nobody wealthy came to the Riviera in the summer. The heat was considered unbearable, and having a suntan was a sign of working in the fields. It wasn't until the 1920s, partly thanks to fashion icons like Coco Chanel, who accidentally got a sunburn on a yacht and made bronzed skin fashionable, that the summer season was born. Once summer became the trendy time to visit, the famous beach clubs were established, and the Croisette truly became the sun-drenched playground we know today. As the coastline curves here and we get closer to the town centre, the atmosphere starts to shift just a little bit. We are now arriving at Midi Beach. Unlike the exclusive, high-priced private beach clubs we walked past earlier, Midi Beach is one of the main public beaches along the Croisette. It is actually managed by the city of Cannes. Because it is public, it has a much more relaxed and accessible feel. You can rent a sun lounger and an umbrella here for a fraction of the price of the private clubs, or just lay your towel right down on the beautiful sand for free. But Midi Beach is famous for something much bigger than just sunbathing. If you are a movie lover, this exact spot is legendary. During the Cannes Film Festival every May, this beach completely transforms. It becomes the cinema on the beach. The city erects a massive movie screen right here on the sand, facing the water, and sets out hundreds of deck chairs. And the best part? It is completely free and open to the public. You don't need a tuxedo, an evening gown, or an exclusive VIP pass. Anyone can come here, sit under the stars, feel the Mediterranean breeze, and watch classic films or premieres with the sound of the waves gently crashing in the background. It is true movie magic. Looking out from the sand here, you also get a beautiful wide view of the bay. In the distance, you can clearly spot the Lérins Islands floating on the horizon. They are just a short 15-minute boat ride from the port. The largest island, Sainte Marguerite, is actually famous for its royal fortress. That is the exact prison where the legendary man in the Iron Mask was held captive in the 17th century. It makes for a fantastic, peaceful day trip if you are ever staying in Cannes. But for now, let's leave the sand behind and continue our walk towards the beating heart of the town. As we leave the beach behind and continue our walk along the water, the large modern structure of the Palace of Festivals is slowly coming into view in the distance. But while we have a couple of minutes before we reach it, I want to tell you the story of how Cannes actually became the capital of world cinema, because it almost didn't happen. In the late 1930s, the only major international film festival in the world was held in Venice. But as the political climate darkened in Europe, the Venice Festival became heavily influenced by fascist propaganda. The French and British film industries decided they needed to create an alternative, a festival celebrating free, independent cinema. They looked at a few cities, including Biarritz and Nice. But Cannes won out, partly because the city offered to build a dedicated venue. The very first Cannes Film Festival was supposed to open on the 1st of September 1939. They had all the stars ready, the posters printed and the films lined up. But that exact same day, Germany invaded Poland, sparking the start of World War II. The festival was immediately cancelled before it even began. It wasn't until 1946, after the war had ended, that the festival finally took place for the very first time, held in the town's former municipal casino. It was a huge success, a symbol of Europe emerging from the dark days of the war. Today, as we walk these sunny streets, it is amazing to think that this massive global event, which defines the city's modern identity, was born out of a desire for artistic freedom. Alright, we are now approaching the very heart of modern Cannes, global fame, Palace of Festivals and Congresses. This massive modern complex, right on the edge of the port, is where the Cannes Film Festival is held every single May. While it might not have the classic Belle Epoque architectural charm of the Carlton Hotel we saw earlier, the sheer amount of cinematic history made inside these walls is absolutely staggering. When this current building was first constructed in 1982, replacing the older, smaller venue, its heavy, blocky design wasn't exactly loved by everyone. In fact, many locals playfully nicknamed it the bunker. But over the years, with glass additions, modern renovations, and a lot of Riviera sunshine, it has truly become a bright, iconic focal point of the bay. And right in front of us, here it is, the famous red carpet. These are the legendary 24 steps of glory, known in French as the Monte des Marches. Even when the festival isn't on, the city generously leaves a section of the red carpet out year round. You will always find tourists, just like today, stopping to take a photo on the carpet, pretending for just a moment to be a movie star. During those 2 weeks in May, this small staircase becomes the most photographed place on Earth. Imagine the energy here. Hundreds of paparazzi are stacked on ladders just across the street. The camera flashes are blinding, the crowds are screaming, and the biggest names in the world are walking these exact steps, hoping their film wins the ultimate prize, the Palme d'Or. Here is a crazy behind-the-scenes fact. Because of the thousands of designer heels and heavy leather shoes walking up and down, the festival organisers actually change this red carpet up to 3 times a day just to make sure it looks completely flawless on television. But this massive building isn't just about movies. Notice the word Congrès in its name. When the film industry packs up and goes home, this convention centre stays incredibly busy. It hosts some of the biggest global trade shows in the world. Everything from international real estate summits to global advertising awards and television markets. It is the true economic engine of Cannes, bringing hundreds of thousands of business delegates to the city all year long. So take your photos on the steps, soak in the glamour, and let's keep moving right around the side of the building where the cinematic history continues directly beneath our feet. Just outside the Palais, as we step away from those famous red stairs, make sure to keep your eyes on the ground. We are now walking onto the Cannes Walk of Fame. Much like the Hollywood Walk of Fame in Los Angeles, this path pays permanent tribute to the giants of the film industry. But instead of brass stars, Cannes does things a bit more personally. This pathway is lined with the actual handprints and signatures of legendary actors and directors who have visited the festival over the decades. There are over 400 of these stainless steel casts, set directly into the pavement, wrapping all the way around the Palais and bordering the adjacent gardens. Whenever a cinematic icon comes to town to receive an award or present a major film, they are invited to press their hands into a clay mould, which is later cast into these permanent metallic plaques. The sheer variety of names you'll find down here is incredible. It's a true celebration of global cinema. You've got American heavyweights like Meryl Streep, Sylvester Stallone, and Quentin Tarantino, right alongside European legends like Sophia Loren, Catherine Deneuve, and Pedro Almodovar. It quickly turns into a bit of a treasure hunt. As you walk along here, you will constantly see people wandering with their heads down, excitedly calling out to their friends when they spot their favourite actor's name. And of course, the best part is that it is completely interactive. It is practically a local tradition to crouch down. Place your hands inside the grooves of the metal and see if your palms match up with the likes of Clint Eastwood or Angelina Jolie. It's a very simple, very fun connection to the magic of the movies. Leaving the immediate coastline behind, we are now heading into the actual town centre of Cannes. Notice how the vibe changes instantly. It is less about luxury resorts and more about daily French life. The architecture here shifts to those classic warm Provençal colours, ochres, pale yellows, and terracotta roofs. We have now stepped away from the immediate waterfront and arrived at Place du General de Gaulle. We have traded the gentle, rolling sounds of the Mediterranean for the unmistakable buzz of a working French city. This massive, bustling intersection is essentially the main transit hub of the town. Geographically and culturally, it acts as the great connector and the great divider between the glamorous, tourist-heavy seafront we just left and the commercial, everyday heart of Cannes. Like almost every city, town and village in France, Cannes has dedicated one of its most prominent central squares to Charles de Gaulle, the famous general and statesman who led the Free French forces during the Second World War. Take a moment to just look around and take in the scene. You can really feel the true pulse of the local residents here. Instead of tourists taking selfies in front of luxury hotels, you have locals rushing to catch the city buses, business people heading to their offices, and residents weaving through the crowds carrying fresh baguettes and daily groceries. The soundtrack of the city is completely different here. Listen to the constant zip of the motor scooters weaving through the traffic, the low hum of the transit system, and the lively French chatter spilling out from the corner cafe terraces. This is authentic, everyday Riviera living, far removed from the exclusive private beach clubs. From this exact square, the rest of the city really branches out. If you love to shop but don't quite have the budget for the diamonds and haute couture back on the Croisette, Rue d'Antibes is exactly where you want to go. It is a fantastic long street packed with high street fashion, local independent boutiques, and incredible chocolatiers. Standing in a square like this really reminds you that Cannes is a real, functioning town with over 70,000 permanent residents. The film festival brings the global magic, but it is intersections like this one that keep the city's heart beating the other 11.5 months of the year. Turning onto Rue Felix IV. Now, this is a brilliant street for food lovers. It is lined with brasseries, cafes, and seafood restaurants with their terraces spilling out onto the pavement. It runs right alongside the old port, so the seafood you get here is incredibly fresh. If you want to sit down with a glass of local Provence rosé and a plate of oysters, this is exactly where you want to be. Just passing the Olympia Cinema here, it is very fitting to see a beautiful historic movie theatre right in the middle of town. Cannes is a city that lives and breathes cinema year-round. Not just during those 2 weeks in May, independent and historic theatres like this one are cherished by the locals. As we leave the massive square behind, we are now stepping onto the city's main shopping artery. If the Croisette is the international showcase of Cannes, then this bustling avenue is its stylish, everyday closet. This is the undisputed heart of shopping for the locals. Unlike the Croisette, which is strictly ultra-luxury brands, this side of town is much more accessible. You still have elegant boutiques and independent designers, but they are mixed in with high street fashion, fantastic shoe stores, and incredible local chocolatiers. Historically, the main road running through this area was actually the old royal route that connected the city of Toulon to nearby Antibes. As we walk, make sure you don't just look at the shop windows. Look up. The architecture along this street is classic 19th century French bourgeois. Notice the elegant pale stone facades, the intricate wrought iron balconies, and the beautiful wooden shutters. Many of these buildings were constructed during Cannes' initial boom in the late 1800s, meant to house the growing middle class that supported the wealthy winter tourists. The energy here is fantastic. It is always buzzing with locals carrying shopping bags, grabbing a quick espresso, or meeting friends. It is a very chic, very French atmosphere. Now we are going to take a turn off the busy main road and weave deeper into the narrow, pedestrian-only streets of the centre. Instantly, it gets a bit quieter. The sound of cars is completely replaced by the clicking of shoes on the cobblestones and the hum of conversation. Right now, we are passing through one of the best spots in town if you just want to sit on a sun-drenched terrace with a café crème and watch the world go by. These charming pedestrian zones are lined with casual bistros and lush potted plants. Some of these lanes are actually older than the Croisette itself. Before the seafront was fully developed, these narrow paths were the absolute centre of life in Cannes, connecting the old town on the hill to the newer settlements. Today, they form a completely car-free, pedestrian paradise, and they are an absolute dream for food lovers. Just take in the smells as we walk. You get the unmistakable, buttery scent of fresh croissants wafting out of the boulangerie. A few doors down, that rich, sharp aroma is coming from a local fromagerie, a traditional cheese shop. If you step inside one of those, you will find hundreds of varieties of French cheese, from pungent Roquefort to creamy Camembert, all aged to perfection. Look at the traditional butchers, the bouchers with their pristine cuts of meat in the window, and the cavistes, the wine merchants, whose shelves are lined with bottles of local Provence, roasted and deep, rich Bordeaux. You will hear the clinking of glasses and silverware as we pass the small, hole-in-the-wall restaurants. These aren't the Michelin-starred dining rooms of the grand hotels. These are family-run bistros where the menus are written on chalkboards and change every single day based on what is fresh at the market. Speaking of the market, you cannot talk about Cannes without talking about its food. The gastronomy here is deeply rooted in Provençal traditions. It is the cuisine of the Mediterranean sun. Because we are so close to the border, the food is heavily influenced by Italy. It is all about locally pressed olive oil, fresh garlic, bright tomatoes, and aromatic herbs like rosemary and thyme. Just a short walk from where we are right now is the Marché Fort, the famous covered market of Cannes. It is often called the stomach of the city. Every morning, local farmers from the surrounding hills bring down their fresh produce, and the fishermen bring in their catch of the day straight from the port. Living in Cannes is a fascinating balance. For 2 weeks in May, the locals essentially hand their city over to Hollywood and the global media. It is chaotic, glamorous, and overwhelming. But for the rest of the year, the people here live a very slow, very traditional Mediterranean lifestyle. If you walk through the local squares in the late afternoon, you will always find groups of older men playing pétanque, the traditional French game of boules under the shade of the plane trees. They will stand there for hours sipping pastis, arguing over the score, and throwing their silver metal balls into the dirt. It is that incredible duality that makes Cannes so special. You can have a $2,000 dinner on a private yacht on a Friday, and on Saturday morning you can buy a €2 slice of soccer from a vendor who has been making it the exact same way for 50 years. As we reach the end of these beautiful, winding pedestrian streets, the buildings are going to start opening up again. You can already feel the sea breeze coming back. We are making our way to the other side of the old port now, preparing to step back out into the Mediterranean sun. We have now looped back towards the water, but this time we are on the completely opposite side of the old port. Welcome to Midi Beach. If the Croisette, which we walked earlier, is where you go to see and be seen, Midi Beach is where you go to actually relax. It has a completely different energy. The atmosphere here is wonderfully laid back, welcoming and family friendly. It is significantly less pretentious, and it is incredibly popular with the locals who live in Cannes year-round. While there are a few private beach clubs dotted along this stretch, the vast majority of Midi Beach is wide-open public beach. You don't need an expensive reservation or VIP status here. You just bring your towel, find a spot on the beautifully soft sand, and enjoy the Mediterranean. Without the massive luxury hotels looming directly across the street, the sky feels bigger, and the sea breeze rolls in off the water uninterrupted. The water here is shallow, calm, and crystal clear, making it absolutely perfect for families with young children. On any given weekend, you will find locals playing beach volleyball, kids splashing in the shallows, and groups of friends sharing a casual picnic right on the sand. And instead of waiters bringing you champagne on a silver platter, you are much more likely to grab a simple, delicious crepe or a quick ice cream from one of the small kiosks lining the promenade behind us. Look out across the water toward the horizon on our right. Those jagged peaks in the distance are the Estral Mountains. They are formed from a very specific type of volcanic rock, giving them a brilliant rust-red colour. The visual contrast between those dramatic red cliffs and the bright azure blue of the sea is one of the most beautiful natural sights on the entire French Riviera. Because this beach faces directly west toward those mountains, it is the absolute best spot in the city to watch the sunset. Now, for the grand finale of our tour, we have left the flat, sandy shores of the beaches behind, and we are currently climbing up the winding, steep, cobbled streets of Les Suquet. This is the absolute oldest neighbourhood in Cannes. In fact, for centuries, this hill was Cannes. The modern city we just walked through below simply didn't exist yet. You can feel it in your legs as we walk up these steps, but the climb is completely worth it. As we weave through these narrow, pastel-coloured alleyways, we are stepping back in time, leaving the super yachts and luxury boutiques behind for the medieval heart of the Riviera. At the very top of this hill sits the historic Castre Castle, and that is our final destination today. As we get higher, you can start catching glimpses of the bright blue Mediterranean Sea perfectly framed between the old houses. Centuries ago, this high vantage point wasn't prized for its beauty. It was prized for survival. The coastline down there was incredibly dangerous, constantly raided by pirates. So the original inhabitants of Cannes lived tightly packed on this hill, safe behind defensive walls. Up ahead, you can now see the massive stone structures crowning the summit. On the left is the Church of Our Lady of Hope, and right next to it is the square watchtower of Castre Castle. These two buildings have stood watch over the bay for hundreds of years. The castle was actually built first, way back in the 11th century, by the powerful monks who lived on the Lérins Islands we saw earlier. This is the Church of Our Lady of Hope. It was completed in the 1600s, though construction actually began a full century earlier in 1521. Take a look around at the architecture. It is built in a beautiful, slightly austere Gothic style, which is actually quite rare to find in this part of southern France. Notice the beautiful wood panelling dating back to the Renaissance and the stunning stained glass windows, letting in those rich, colourful streaks of light. Because Cannes was originally just a humble fishing village, this church holds a very special place in the hearts of the locals. Our Lady of Hope is the patron saint of sailors. For generations, the fishermen of Cannes would come up to this exact church to pray for a safe return before heading out into the unpredictable waters of the Mediterranean. During the summer, the church still hosts incredible classical music concerts because the acoustics inside these thick stone walls are absolutely perfect. It is a place of incredible reverence, a stark but beautiful contrast to the glitz and glamour happening just a few minutes walk down the hill.
Eu vi, eu não entendi. Não, sério, entendi. Mano, você vê que eu pensei nisso? Os dois, porque ela tem
As I mentioned on the way up, this castle was constructed in the 11th century by the monks of the Lérins Abbey. Back then, they essentially owned Cannes. They built this fortress for one very specific reason: defence. During the Middle Ages, the Mediterranean was heavily plagued by Saracen pirates who would constantly raid the coastal villages. Look up at that imposing square tower known as the Tour du Suquet. It stands over 20 metres high. Day and night, guards would stand at the top of that tower, scanning the horizon. If they saw pirate ships approaching the bay, they would light a massive fire at the top. That fire would signal the villagers working down by the water to grab their families, run up the hill, and seek shelter inside the castle walls before the raiders arrived. For hundreds of years, this castle was a working monastery and a military stronghold. It wasn't until the French Revolution in the late 1700s that the property was seized by the state and eventually sold off. Today, The castle has found a completely new life. It now houses the Museum of World Explorations. If you have the time to go inside during your visit, it is highly recommended, because Cannes became a playground for wealthy, eccentric travellers in the 19th century. Many of them donated their private collections to the city. So, inside this medieval French castle, you will actually find incredible artifacts from the Himalayas, the Arctic, pre-Columbian America, and Oceania, alongside a beautiful collection of Mediterranean antiquities. The courtyard we are walking through is also surrounded by beautiful Mediterranean gardens. The pine trees, the cypress, the blooming bougainvillea. It is incredibly serene up here. As we approach the stone ramparts, you can see the famous oversized cannons sign framing the scenery perfectly. Just look at this magnificent panoramic view. This is, without a doubt, the single best vantage point in the entire city. Directly below us, you can see the old port with its mix of traditional fishing boats and massive multi-million-dollar luxury yachts side by side. Standing up here, looking down at the city, you really get a sense of the incredible journey of Cannes. It started as a tiny, vulnerable fishing village. It was transformed into a winter retreat for European royalty. And finally, it evolved into the undisputed capital of world cinema and international glamour. Yet, through all of those changes, the Mediterranean soul of the city has remained perfectly intact. Thank you so much for joining us on this walking tour today. We hope you enjoyed exploring the history, the luxury, and the hidden charm of Cannes as much as we did. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, leave a comment telling us your favourite part of the tour, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next adventure. Until next time, from the beautiful French Riviera. See you soon.